thyself is to love thyself, is to examine, observe, and respect thyself. It's an ongoing process, never to be explained in a brief synopsis. It's a preoccupation with reflection and revelation that can only be achieved through discipline and determination.
Hello and welcome to the Encouraging Word Show. I am Jamila Freelain, your host, and I thank you for tuning in today. Listen, I want to let you know that I have an exciting show for you today. Now, one of the things that people often ask me is, what exactly is it you do? They know I do something associated with college, but they don't know exactly what. So I get questions sometimes from here, there, and everywhere. What I specialize in is college and career preparation. In other words, I'm like a college and career preparation coach. I'm the person who helps you get your head in the game and become more prepared and become more deliberate, strategic, and more intentional about how you select your college path or your career path. And I always say those two coupled together because typically when I'm talking about college, I might be talking about four-year colleges the majority of the time. But I don't necessarily think that four-year college is for everybody. There's a path for everyone, though. And typically when you're going to college in the first place, it's with the intent of embarking on a career path. Am I correct? So when we talk about career path, that's inclusive of everyone, whether you're looking at doing a two-year school, whether you're looking at doing a trade, whether you're looking at doing some type of vocational program, that's acceptable. What we all want to do, though, is to make sure that we're very intentional. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but when it comes down to cost, tuition these days is just off the chain. It's just through the roof. It's out of this world, really. And honestly, it doesn't necessarily have to be if we play our cards right. So that's actually what my book is about. My book is about planning for college and being more strategic and intentional and understanding a lot of the different resources out there that students and parents often overlook or just are not aware of because they didn't plan. Unfortunately, a lot of times I meet those students after the fact, after they've acquired or incurred some debt. So if you're watching this show, I appreciate you and I appreciate you sharing the information and the shows with other people because I believe in starting with college prep, honestly, as soon as that child is old enough to speak. But in terms of how young I start working with students, I typically start working with students as early as sixth grade because, again, I think there's a grooming that takes place. And when you can begin looking at things like various college exploration avenues, and when you can start researching and understanding different opportunities that are available at an earlier age, by the time that student is a high school junior or senior, they are much more deliberate and they are much more educated and intelligent in their decision making when it comes to a college path or career path, whichever works best. So now what I want to do is jump right in, and I want to share with you a quote that you may not be aware of, but if you didn't realize it, there's really only about 53%, 52.9% to be exact. Only 52.9% of students that are enrolled in U.S. colleges and universities in the fall of 2009 completed school within 6 years. In other words, completed their four-year degrees within 6 years. Now, I know, it takes 4 years to complete a bachelor's degree, so you think, well, why did they say 6 years? Because if they actually quoted the statistics for 4 years, to be honest, the statistic probably would be closer to about, maybe about 36, 38%. That's how low it is. And the reason for that is not because we lack intelligence or intellectual capacity, but a lot of times I will submit to you that we fail to plan. And of course, we know the rule is that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And that's what we're finding so often. And what happens as a result of that on the back end, if you fail to plan and if you are not planning on going back to school, that sort of thing, you're left with that debt. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but college debt is unlike any other debt. You can't bypass college debt. You can't get rid of the college debt or the student loan debt from doing things like a bankruptcy or filing chapter this, that, and the third. So be mindful of that. So the reason that I am so adamant and so passionate and so encouraging with students and parents to plan on the front end is so you don't end up with that heap of debt on the back end. Who the heck wants to pay on your student loans for 30 years? And I'm not against student loans. What I'm against is not planning and not intelligently looking at them and how to finance better and conservatively and efficiently and effectively so that you're not stuck with that debt for 30 years for a bachelor's degree of all things. So I want you guys to be aware of that. So that's a little bit about where I stand on college and career prep and what I do. Now I want to jump right in because I have an awesome show today. And I want you to get your notepad, take some notes, and we're going to talk about college selection. And the word for the day is preparation, all day today. So college majors, let's talk about the college selection process. College majors is one of the first things you want to think about as you're looking at different college opportunities and where to maybe attend school. Again, be it a vocational school, 4-year school, 2-year school, what have you. When it comes to college majors, you really want to think about what it is that you're good at. You want to think about what aligns with your personality. You want to be very insightful and introspective with that. I have a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he was an essayist back in the 1800s, and he says, if a man can write a better book or preach a better sermon or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, and even if he builds a house, if he builds that house in the woods, the world will make a path to his door. So in other words, if you can key in to what it is that you're good at, what you're passionate about, what ties into exactly who you are and what your gifts are, and you maybe align that with your major or align that with some sort of training for your particular career path, especially if you do it at an exceptional level and better than anyone else on the planet. It doesn't matter where you are. Folks are going to beat down a path to your door to get to you. So be mindful of that as you're looking at college majors. Don't just go for this major or that major because somebody told you that's where they make all the money, or that's the school to be at, and my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my cousin went to that school, so that's the place I'm going to be, and I'm going to major in that because my cousin majored in that or my uncle made a decision to go into that. Make sure that you're in tune with yourself, because your college major is going to be a great opportunity for you to expand your skill set and embark on your career path. But if you are wrong at selecting your major, or you pick majors 5, 6, 7 different times, you're wasting valuable time, valuable energy, and unfortunately valuable money as well. So just be mindful that with college selection, that's one of the first pieces, is kind of thinking about your major and just remembering that if you find things that are in tune or in line with what you're gifted at and that fit your personality, you're already setting yourself up for success. Number 2, let's look at slide number 2, and that talks about distance. Now, when we talk about distance, I'm not just saying from a standpoint of if somebody's going to school 2 hours away or 4 hours away. You need to look at distance even if you're going to school locally. Have a game plan in mind. Sounds very simple, but I'm here to tell you, millions of people do not take this in consideration. It seems like such a simple thing, but it's a big thing. How are you going to get to school all day, every day? Okay? You have to go to school 9 times out of 10, 5 days a week at the very least. Now, if you got to go to school every day, and let's say even if you're going to school locally, how are you getting to school? You don't have a car. How are you going to get to school? If you don't have public transportation near you, or it's not accessible, or if it's set up in a city like Charlotte, North Carolina has a public transportation system, but it's not set up in the way that the public transportation system is in, say, a larger city like New York or Chicago or somewhere like Atlanta, for example. So while it's available, it's not necessarily always the most user-friendly in terms of your time or your commute. It might take you 2 hours to get across town just because of the way it's set up. So you want to be very mindful of the distance, whether it's across town or whether it's across the country. Be mindful of the distance and mindful of what it will cost you to get back and forth to class, whether you're local or whether you're, again, across the country. And then you want to be mindful of exactly how you're going to get there. If you're a person who's, let's say, not in your maybe first year of college, but you're maybe sophomore or junior, you want to kind of get out of the dorms. You want to get off campus. Well, just be mindful again. Not only is it great to be grown, but it's also a grown-ish thing to do, to be mindful of knowing how you're going to get there, how you're going to make sure that you make it to campus so you can get back and forth on time, and you can get back and forth safely as well, especially if you have evening classes or that sort of thing. Sounds like a simple thing, but understand that that's one of the things that trips students up a lot of times. whether you're an adult student or a high school student who's just graduated and going to college. I've encountered that scenario too many times where people didn't consider their commute, and as a result maybe had to pull out of school because the accessibility wasn't there, or they weren't able to get to and from as easily as they thought they would. So having a plan in place makes a world of difference. Number three thing actually, we're kind of moving right along. So with college selection, you want to look at the college size. Think about who you are as a person. When it comes to the college size, you want to be a big fish in a little pond, you want to be a small fish in a big pond. What fits your personality? Are you a person who's really extroverted and just have this awesome personality, and you just have a gregarious personality and you love everybody and you love being around people and you don't mind being around 50, 60, 70,000 people? Or are you a person who's more introspective? You're quiet, you're more laid back, you maybe went to a smaller school, that sort of thing, and you really flourish or thrive when you get that one-on-one instruction from your professors, that sort of thing. Nothing wrong with either personality, but you've got to know yourself, because you want to put yourself in the best situation that's where you're going to be successful. Worst thing you could do is to spend $30,000-$40,000 a year at a place where you are absolutely miserable. And ladies and gentlemen, that's about what it costs right now. Average tuition for maybe, let's say, a state school is going to be anywhere from $28,000 to $32,000, and that's nationally. If you're looking at more like private schools, you're looking at an average cost of maybe $45,000 to $50,000 a year, and that's real talk. Now remember, that's just tuition. Let's talk about cost of attendance a little later after the break, so we can really put some things in perspective. So resources for the college. Let's talk a little bit about resources. As far as resources, if you have maybe learning challenges, that sort of thing, what kind of college resources are set up at that particular college or university or vocational school that you're interested in going to? Case in point, if you're a student maybe who's had an IEP, in other words, an individualized education plan put together, because maybe you just need a little more time taking your test, or maybe there's certain accommodations that you need. Maybe you have to sit in front of the room because of a vision problem or something like that. If there are any challenges, be aware and be in tune with what those challenges are and what that particular college or university is going to do for you or offers in order to make it as great of an opportunity for you as you can be. Again, this is about setting yourself up for success. As I've mentioned so many times, it's not about going to college. It's about graduating. You want to get through the process. Making it there on the yard is fine, but you want to be able to stay and complete the task, okay? So when it comes to other examples of resources, if you're a first-generation college student like I was, you don't even know what you don't know. So you want to be able to set yourself up for success. Do they have maybe different workshops? Are there different things that they have in place, maybe tutoring? If this is your first go around at college, you sometimes need that extra bit of support system in place so you can be as successful as possible. Does your college have that? And if they don't, it may not be a bad school, but it may not be the best school for you. Look at those things and be mindful to look at those things when you go on college tours. And we'll talk about college tours in a bit. But again, be mindful of what resources are available at your school. Counseling services. Sometimes we've gone through very traumatic things. When you think of even something like the school shoot, well, there's several school shootings that have taken place, unfortunately, recently. But a lot of those students then have gone through a serious trauma. So for those students, for example, that are graduating from high school and going away maybe to this college or that sort of thing, they may need a little more counseling and things in place, because the anxiety that comes just from being away from home for the first time and just being in an environment that's foreign to them, that sort of thing, can create an overwhelming amount of anxiety. And if they've already experienced something, then that can just be enough to send them over the edge or to prevent them from maybe finishing out their first year. But if they're in tune with what their needs are and they realize that they need additional emotional support or counseling services, that sort of thing, and if that particular college or university offers those sorts of services above and beyond what a traditional school has, then that can really, really set you up for success. Again, it's about not going to college, but graduating. So that's the name of the game. College costs. I mentioned I wanted to talk a little bit about that. coming back from the break. But since we have a little bit of time, I think we have about a minute or so left before we break and go to the next segment. So college costs. Real quickly, again, I talked about tuition costs, but keep in mind, whenever you're looking at a college or university, you don't want to just look at the tuition costs. What you want to look at is the cost of attendance. That's your overall cost. You want to know what your tuition is. You want to know what your room and board is. You want to know what your lab fees are, what your insurance fees are, what your parking fees are. You want to know what the fees are that are associated overall in totality for that particular college or university, because at the end of the day, you don't want to set yourself up for failure. One of the worst things I've seen students do, and I've seen students and parents do it often, is they're taking into consideration maybe the college tuition, and so they're thinking, okay, well, the tuition by itself is maybe $30,000, but they fail to take in consideration those things like I mentioned, transportation cost, or things like books and fees. So when all is said and done, maybe their total costs end up being closer to $40,000 a year. Well, if you were only planning for $30,000, you're about $10,000 short right off the bat. And keep in mind, that's if the college tuition costs stay the same. College tuition never stays the same. Always goes up. Trust and believe. Now, how much it goes up and the rate of increase really depends. Now, that's not a guarantee that it's going to go up every year, but you can pretty much be assured that at some point in time during your tenure, during your 4 years at that particular college or university, if you're going to a traditional school, you can expect to anticipate at least one college tuition increase. So again, if you're starting off already at a $10,000 deficit, you're really setting yourself off to be in the red starting out the gate. And you want to be mindful of that. You want to make sure that you take college, the total cost of tuition altogether, not just the college tuition. So those are just 5 top things. That's the top 5 list for the first half of the show in terms of talking about things you should be mindful of for the college selection process. When we come back to the break, we'll look at another top 5 list, and then we're going to close out. Thanks for watching. All right, so thanks for tuning in, for those of you who might just be tuning in for the first time, and for those of you that are continuing on from the Facebook Live, hey, welcome back. So we did a top 5 list in the first half of the show talking about college selection process and how to best prepare. Oh, that's right, I said I was going to get really comfortable right about now. So taking off my jacket, I'm getting warmed up, I'm in the zone now. When it comes to talking about college selection, though, the second half of this show, I want to start off with a quote that I think is very important. And just to let you know, the average student, the average 4-year college student typically is going to change majors about 3 or 4 times. Now, what does that mean from a financial and economic standpoint? Again, if you're, let's say, switching from a major that's over here that's maybe unrelated to this major, you're going to maybe lose some college credits, you're going to maybe lose some time because there might be another year that you have to make up, that sort of thing. And then let's say you do that and switch to another major again. So now you've put yourself further back, you've put yourself further in the hole a lot of times financially, and then again, you can't make up for lost time, so you may have to put another 2 year or an additional year, so that puts you 2 more years in. And again, there's not a crime. Of course, we've all switched our mind with different things. Heck, if I go to a restaurant right now, trust and believe I'm going to change my mind 3 or 4 different times before the waiter comes. The difference, though, is that the cost and the opportunity for changing my major at the restaurant or changing my order at the restaurant is going to be far different from changing a major at the college than it is if I was changing my major at college. Now, here's the thing. At the end of the day, if we prepare, if we're watching shows like this, if we're reading books like Free Money for College and some of the other tremendous books that are out there, you're setting yourself up for success because you're preparing your mind, you're grooming yourself and getting ready so that way you can be successful. It ain't about going to college, y'all. Anybody can go to college, okay? That's not as hard as people think. It's not about going to school. It's about finishing. It's about completing the task and doing it in a job well done. So let's talk about statistics for a second. 80% of the students, college students nationwide, change their major at least once before graduating. And again, the harm in doing that, if you're doing it on a large scale like we're doing here in America, is there's millions of people that do that all day, every day. And unfortunately, though, because of the college costs and because of the, how should I say, binds that are put on college costs, again, it's not like some other debt where you can, wish it away, or after a certain number of years that just kind of falls off your credit report. It doesn't work like that in terms of, especially federal student loan debt. That's with you. So if you can be wiser in planning ahead of time, it can make a world of difference in terms of making sure that you have a right fit and a right match the first time around. Plus, you want to save yourself some time. You want to get out there and be able to get in the game, so to speak. Now, let's look at that top 5 list for this half of the show. Talk about college admissions requirements. So for college admissions requirements, what are some things that colleges and universities are looking for? I'm glad you asked. So when it comes down to it, they're looking at things like your GPA. For those of you who are just hearing that term for the first time, GPA is your grade point average. In other words, what is your accumulation? What is the average grades that you've earned the whole time that you were in college? And keep in mind, this is a cumulative thing. So if you did really horribly freshman and sophomore year, and then you rocked it out your senior year, keep in mind how you performed grade-wise your freshman and sophomore year still has an impact on your senior year grades. So you want to make sure that all the way through that you kind of stay consistent and that you're mindful of that, because it's what they call cumulative. It's not your last semester. So even if you got all A's and you took all honors classes and you got an average of a 4.333 your senior year, keep in mind if you had a 1.111 during your freshman and sophomore year, they kind of balance that out, so it maybe puts you in the range of maybe a C plus B average. And in this world of competitive admissions requirements with so many schools, you want to set yourself up for success the first time around. Just be mindful of that. So college admissions requirements, what else are they looking at? They're looking at your test scores, specifically ACT or SAT test scores if you're going to a 4-year university. Now there's other entrance exams like the asset test, the AccuPlacer, that sort of thing, if you're maybe going to a vocational school or if you're going to a 2-year college, maybe a junior college, a JUCO, or a community college. But be mindful that test scores are something else that they look at. For some schools, the test scores can be a weed out process. For other schools, they look at those entrance exams just to be able to know where to place you. Are you maybe set up for this English class, or do we have to put you at a different level, maybe just based upon your ability and your performance on that test? So be mindful of what the college admissions requirements are for the schools that you're looking at or you intend to go to. Community service, believe it or not, that's something that's huge. A lot of colleges and universities love to admit students and work with students who have demonstrated leadership, who demonstrate that they have the ability to work with others in a team type of format and situation. And you can always boost your chances with scholarships as well when you've got a lot of community involvement in your background. And that's whether you're on a bowling league, a golf team, you're on the basketball team, football team, whatever it might be, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, doing something with church. Be mindful of putting those activities on your college application. For that student that has the 4.111 or 4.333 but doesn't have any community service backing it, sometimes that student is kind of deemed for that, and the student who has a 3.999 or a 3.7 but has a tremendous wealth of doing everything from assisting with a food drive to coat drives and demonstrated leadership, sometimes those students can be equalized, the playing field can be equalized based upon their level of activity. And that's oftentimes what colleges and universities like to do as well. They're looking at who the student is comprehensively and how they can bring about some diversity with those GPAs and that sort of thing, but also with the involvement that those students have and the backgrounds that those students have as well. What do they bring to the table? Also think about if your school is a specialized school, if it's a performing arts school perhaps, or if it's a very elite private college or university, do they require an interview? They very well may. And if they do, you want to practice that beforehand. You want to maybe record yourself, kind of like I'm doing here on the Facebook Live. You want to do things like that so that way you set yourself up for success. Do they require an audition? Do they require, let's say, a portfolio if it's an art school? That sort of thing. And keep in mind that some of those very same things that are required for a scholarship or for a college application are also going to be the same things that organizations and schools are looking for scholarships. So get that stuff together so that you'll have a file that you can put together and bam, be ready for your senior year. Now, college instruction and rigor. One of the things that I've talked about before is this particular topic. And what I mean by rigor is basically it's just a fancy, cute little $10 word for how competitive is your school. So the competitiveness of your school is something you want to take in consideration, particularly if you're going to a school that specializes in whatever it is that you're interested in doing. You want to know kind of where your school ranks. You want to find out maybe what the faculty of that school, of that particular program that you're going to be taking, have done in the past. What maybe books have they written? What kind of research have they done? What kind of projects have they worked on? Remember, these are going to be some of the very same people that are shaping and molding you and are setting you forth on the path for that particular college or career, for that particular career path that you're embarking on. So you want to be very mindful of knowing what their backgrounds are as well. These people are here to inspire you and are oftentimes going to act as mentors. So it's good to actually research your faculty. Again, that's something that a lot of students and parents don't think of doing. But again, if you're going to be spending at least a minimum of $30,000 a year, minimum, that's something you want to be mindful of. Now, when we talk about colleges and universities, of course, there's a lot of different selections. So there's 4-year universities, there's 2-year colleges, which are junior colleges and community colleges. Again, there's vocational or what they call trade schools. And then sometimes there's just professional designations that you can consider for your career path as well. An example would be something like a real estate license, or let's say an insurance license, selling insurance. If you wanted to go into cosmetology, that sort of thing. Those are trades, or those are professional licensing areas or designations that you can get into that don't necessarily require you to go for a 4-year university, that sort of thing. But if that's something that you're passionate about, then pursue that with all your heart and all your interest. But just be mindful, those are career options as well. Some people want to maybe do things with leadership and travel and that sort of thing, and maybe they're concerned about college costs, and maybe they hadn't thought about it because their family is not involved with the military, but the military may be a really good consideration that just needs to maybe cross your wire in order to really make your dreams happen, and in order to really go towards a fulfilling career. So again, the same thing is not going to be right for everybody, but just understand that those are some of the options that are available, that are out there for you. As far as college acceptance rates, that's something else you want to consider in your college selection process. If you're applying to schools and maybe you're the best student this world has ever seen, but maybe that college or university that you're submitting your application to, that you know that this is your A school, this is your top school, you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you want to go there, but maybe they only have a 30% acceptance rate. It's in your best interest to apply to several different schools. Maybe when you consider if your school has less than, let's say, maybe a 40% application rate for each one of those schools that you're looking at, if they have a lower acceptance rate like that, then you want to apply to at least 2 more schools for every school that you apply to like that. You want to set yourself up for success, and you want to set yourself up for success in the right way. You don't want to wait until the spring when everybody else is getting their letters back and their acceptance letters and find out because you only applied to maybe 1 or 2 schools that now you don't have a place to go. So now you're scrambling, trying to get into somewhere when you could have just done things a little more deliberately and planned a little better, and go ahead and taking that extra effort to apply for 1 more application or that sort of thing. Another thing you want to be mindful of, and this is last but not least, is what kind of career services are offered. In other words, even when you're in school, you're in high school, you want to think about that college or university that you're thinking of going to. What what kind of companies hire the graduates from that particular college or university. Now, this goes back to something I've mentioned in another show where I talked a lot about selecting a college major. One of the best things that you could do is doing research for your particular major and understanding who are some of the top employers in your industry. Because for that matter, if you know who some of the top employers are in your particular industry, and then you're looking at a college or university that maybe doesn't really recruit or doesn't train you maybe as good as another school does for that area, and if maybe the top employers for your industry are hiring the students from this school and much more proactive about recruiting students from that school, then that might be the school that you want to look at going to, as opposed to this school just because your mom or your dad or your brother or sister went to this particular university. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of the fact that at the end of the day, you want to set yourself up for the greatest level of success. And as you're looking at your college majors and looking at the ranking or competitiveness of your school and looking at maybe the backgrounds of your instructors, that sort of thing, also be mindful of who's hiring those graduates. Do they offer internship opportunities? If you can have an apprenticeship or an internship under your belt, that really helps to move you to the front of the line when you graduate from college, because you've already got some work experience under your belt. And 9 times out of 10, if that particular internship or apprenticeship well, you're going to be the person that, again, moves to not the head of the class, but the front of the line and gets the job oftentimes for that particular company that you've interned with or done an apprenticeship with. And be mindful of asking those questions and getting that information first and foremost, especially when you're visiting different colleges and universities. Now, my time is just about to wrap up, so I want to mention one other thing about college tours, and that's something I'll talk about in some upcoming episodes as well. But as far as college tours, I'm big on group college tours, and here's a brief little paragraph out of the book about college tours. Most group tours are set up only for students to attend, but be mindful if you're as available as a parent to chaperone or to go along on the college tours. I highly recommend that so you can view the schools as well. Whenever I've actually hosted a college tour, I encourage parents to attend, and typically I offer them a discounted rate as well. When students attend a college tour with a group, this is a great opportunity to meet several other prospective students at one time, so you can do a little bit of networking, that sort of thing. And it's great for colleges because they didn't have to go out of their way to get these students and bring them to the college, or they didn't have to pay a representative and send that representative out on the road. Some colleges will allow students who have visited the college to apply to that college without an application fee. This is not always the case, but it is another consideration for saving money. Saving $30 here and $30 there can add up pretty quickly. Plus, it allows students to see the college firsthand and see whether or not they like it. Remember, over and over, I tell students this all the time, they're going to send you the most beautiful brochures, and you're going to see the best and the newest buildings on their website, but you're not going to know that that particular college or university is set next to a nuclear plant unless you actually go visit. You're not going to know that they've got bad water until you go visit. You're not going to know a lot of things until you actually set foot on that campus. That's not going to be in the brochure. You're not going to be able to pull a student to the side and say, hey, what do you really think of this school, or what made you select this college, unless you actually go to visit the school. So you want to get the real deal. Again, if we're talking a $30,000 investment minimum per year, you owe it to yourself to take that opportunity and learn firsthand. Now, that's actually my time for today. I'm going to wrap up. I was going to wrap up with a poem, but we're out of time. So I'm going to wrap up with that poem when we go on our next episode. And I want to say thank you for watching. Keep on watching and make sure that you share the information. This is valuable information that can save you thousands of dollars down the road. All right? I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.